Joining me now is managing partner of Airline Weekly, Seth Kaplan. Seth, thank you very much. A lot of analysts today nervous about airline investments, about the sector in general. Are you? Do we have valid concerns about whether or not this DOJ investigation is going to turn into proof that the airlines are colluding against consumers?
Yeah, Cheryl, I think a lot of people watching this show sort of have that torn loyalty, right? You know, on one hand, holding airline shares and you're rooting for airlines to do well. On the other hand, travelers who, some of whom say, hey, it's gotten more expensive to travel in recent years. But, you know, when you talk about collusion, that's a specific allegation. And we're going to have to wait and see what the government has. If they're saying that competing airline executives got together in a room or over phone, email, and colluded to control capacity together, that's one thing. But if they're just sort of blowing off steam about the fact that airfares really for the first time in history have been rising in recent years instead of just falling and pushing airlines into bankruptcy, that in and of itself is not collusion.
Well, Seth, here's the thing, though, and this is where I think there might be smoke and fire at the same time. Just crossing a few moments ago, actually, we got a statement via Reuters from the state of Connecticut. The AG there, Attorney General, is investigating, probing 4 airlines over possible antitrust violations. I'm reading this directly, sorry, off my computer, but this is Delta, Southwest, American, United, the same airlines that most of whom have now told Fox Business that, yes, they did get DOJ letters. So is there a connection here between the Attorney General of Connecticut and the DOJ?
Well, I mean, the allegations sound similar. So, again, we'll have to wait and see, if in fact they're working together, for example. It would be rather coincidental for there to be the same allegations just coming out at the same time if they weren't working together on this. Again, though, when you hear these sorts of things, people say, well, a handful of airlines now control the marketplace. Well, if you look around at other industries, the airline industry just now finally sort of looks more like other industries, right? I mean, we can choose from among, 3 or 4 5 cell phone companies, supermarkets.
But you can't, Seth. That's exactly what so many people were worried about when we had all of these mergers and consolidations happening in the industry, is that we were going to end up where we are right now, and that's that they have not increased capacity. I mean, and they haven't. I mean, that is the truth.
Well, they are. I mean, the irony here is that even today, as this came out, presumably, they've been working on this for a while. Guess what airlines are doing going into later in the year and early next year? They're starting to grow rather wildly again because fuel prices have fallen. So really, there's some lag time, but the market ends up working. I mean, a decade ago, it was the airlines that were basically making the opposite argument. They were pretty much saying, look, we're all going bankrupt and we can't get those greedy consumers to give us enough.
Seth, how many billions of dollars, though, have these? I mean, look, and I used to work for an airline. I used to work for Southwest. Our viewers know that. But how many? I mean, look at the $7 billion in fees they made in the first quarter of this year on baggage fees, on extra. I mean, they're making money hand over fist and lower oil prices. I don't think this is a big surprise to many of our viewers tonight, Seth.
Yeah, well, Cheryl, and all of those billions of dollars have added up to profit margins that finally, have airlines recovering their cost of capital after a history of never doing that. So when you look at the marketplace, what you see is an industry that really finally learned from its mistakes, and really not a lot more than that. With the fuel prices, this is, the fact that the airfares haven't fallen yet. And by the way, record it, quote me 6 months from now, they will be lower because airlines are starting to grow now more rapidly and oversupply the market again. But the fact that they haven't fallen yet is just the typical lag time that you get. Again, a decade ago, airfares were rising. Airlines couldn't pass around those rising costs fast enough to consumers. That's why they were all going bankrupt and laying off tens of thousands of workers. And we as consumers got to fly around on those below-cost airfares subsidized by those poor people, by the shareholders that were being wiped out. Now, for the better part of a year, it's the opposite condition. You have low fuel prices. Right. Airfares still rather high, but sure enough, as always happens with lower fuel prices, airlines going forward are growing again, and those airfares are going to fall. You look at this, it's a market that pretty much works. It just doesn't always work quite in real time, but over history, air travel is still a pretty good deal.
I'm going to definitely bring this tape back up to you in 6 months because I have a feeling you're going to be wrong. And B, I want the flight attendants to get a raise because they've been beaten up over the last decade serving people.
They have.
Seth, thank you very much. Seth Kaplan.